He's our very first National Children's Book Ambassador and the author of The Stinky Cheese Man and the Time Warp Trio. Join me next on Books Alive as I sit down with author Jon Scieska. If you've got a reluctant reader at home, get your paper and pencil ready. That's coming up next on Books Alive. Thank you so much for joining us today on Books Alive, and as always, I am just thrilled to bring today's author to you. Today it is our National Children's Book Ambassador, Mr. Jon Scieska, and welcome to Books Alive. Thanks so much for being here.
Oh, my pleasure, Barb. Glad to be here.
This is really great. Now, you are the first National Children's Book Ambassador, also called the Children's Laureate.
Yes. Pretty impressive, huh?
Very impressive. And how does that feel? How is it going?
Well, it was kind of a wild surprise since this was the first one ever. I didn't even know there was such a thing when they called me up and asked me if I'd like to be one. I said, is this a prank? I thought it was Lane Smith calling me and just messing around, or Mo Willems, or Jack Gantos, any one of those jokers. But it's turned out to be a great thing because my job is just to promote all the children's books. And I love doing that. I read all kinds of books and just go around and tell people how to get connected with kids' books.
Now, Jon, was this actually born from that horrible study that the NEA did that said our children aren't reading? Is that why we have a National Children's Book Ambassador?
That was a piece of it, though it's been an idea at the Library of Congress for years, because we have like a laureate and a poet laureate. And other countries, like the UK has a children's laureate, and we just thought, hey, we should be doing that too. And it made so much sense. So I think all those pieces came together and we realized, yeah, I mean, the statistics are terrible. Kids are reading less and less. But meanwhile, we have spectacular books. We have more and more stuff.
Yeah, it's getting incredible what they're publishing these days. Okay, so you're on the road for 2 years, right?
Yeah.
And probably hearing and seeing a lot.
Yeah.
And I'm figuring you're focusing a lot on our reluctant readers.
Yeah.
What do you think makes someone a reluctant reader?
Well, that's exactly, each ambassador is going to get to pick a different platform. So that's my platform, which kind of came out of my work with boys and guys reading, where I realized what really makes some boys better readers applies to all readers, and reluctant readers in particular. These are readers who in large part can read, but a lot of them choose not to read. And that's because maybe there's other things that compete for their attention, like video games or online. There's so many other things going on in kids' lives now. Or they just don't find that book that motivates them to want to be readers.
And is there an age that you kind of are hearing that that's happening? Is it 7 and 8?
It kind of came out of my experience teaching. I taught 1st grade through 8th grade for about 10 years in New York City. And I always saw like those 2nd, 3rd, 4th graders is a pretty crucial time. 2nd grade as they just take off in longer books. And then sometimes as they hit like 4th grade, suddenly like parents don't know what to help them read. They don't really have favorites. It's tougher to find. They're doing so many more things. So I think the studies pinpointed 4th grade and then a little later like 6th grade, where as they get older and read tougher things.
It's a couple of shifts there.
Yeah, yeah.
Now, why do you think they picked you for this?
That's a great question. At first I told him, I said, do you realize I'm the guy who wrote The Stinky Cheese Man? Did you mean to call someone else?
Did you misdial?
But you know what? That's what I loved about them. They came back and they said, no, this was chosen by a panel of people in the kids' book business.
Isn't that great?
Yeah, and it was such a nice honor. And I just said, yeah, you know what? And they wanted someone to represent not the kind of the stereotypical kids book writer who people might think was like the quiet lady telling people to be quiet. Yeah. It's just like, no, we've got so much other stuff.
Do you have your medal on you?
I'm glad you mentioned it. I do happen to have my medal.
Okay, cool.
I usually wear it, but it's getting a little tough to get through the airports, you know. Even though
That
I'm
must
check
be
it
a
out.
trip to get
What
it
do you
through
think?
the airport.
Well, I tell them, look, I'm the ambassador. I can take 5 ounces of shampoo if I feel like it. It hasn't worked so
What do
far.
they say? Yeah, I can see the face.
I got diplomatic immunity. Come on.
I noticed your name is on the back. That is
Yes,
really
and
cool.
it's spelled correctly.
That
too.
is impressive.
kinda
That is
nice.
very impressive. Yeah.
But I just got this a couple weeks ago. The Librarian of Congress,
Uh-huh.
Dr. James Billington, awarded it to me in a ceremony.
Oh.
Then I read to Laura Bush and the collected group of
Uh-huh.
70 authors at the National Book Festival. And it was hysterical. I
Oh,
had the
how
best time.
Fun. Oh, that's so great. Now, I understand one of your illustrators in the Trucktown series, David Shannon, has really the answer to why you were selected as the National Children's
Oh, I don't know
Book
if I heard
Ambassador.
that or not. What
Because
was his answer?
You look really great in the sash.
Ah, I think he's
Yeah,
right.
right.
Well, Dave Shannon also had some other great suggestions. He thought I should get a Captain Crunch hat and maybe some nice epaulets.
Nice.
And he taught a whole group of like 300 kindergartners how to traditionally say hello and goodbye to the ambassador, which is the salam. So he had all these little
Can
guys
you
going
do
like,
the salam?
oh. So everywhere I go, I pretty much insist on that.
On the salam. Well, as you depart today, we'll have a
I
group
was
salam.
hoping.
Okay.
Yes, I wasn't going to mention it, but since you brought it up.
Okay. Now you're launching on something new, and let me hold this up so people can see.
Oh,
it.
nice.
This
Here,
is
I'll
your fabulous
move my medal here.
Trucktown initiative. Book 1 is Smash Crash. And before we get into this, I want to ask you something. What do you connect to in these kids? Because when I read this and I see Smash Crash and I know how fun it's going to be for these
Yeah.
little guys
Yeah.
to sit there and watch that, I want to know if you've defined that thing that you're connecting to, that you reach into.
No, I don't think I do it that scientifically. I think it comes out of growing up with 5 brothers, which is certainly one factor. And then the other piece is having been a teacher for 10 years and lived with kids.
Okay.
In all my books, I really credit having been a teacher for whatever it is that connects with kids.
What did that give you?
I think a huge respect for kids, to realize how smart they are, how just amazing they are, how creative they are. And I like to give them, show them stuff in my books to kind of give them permission to really enjoy a story.
Okay.
And I always want that kid in the back of the room to sit up and go, wow, what's going to happen next?
Yes. Yes.
And this, Trucktown, is for the littlest guys.
Yeah.
I wanted that very youngest audience, the pre-K, just beginning readers, to look at it and go, here's a reason to want to be a reader. Because I think that's the thing we're missing with all the testing. It's like we're killing kids with testing.
Right.
There's no joy in reading anymore.
Yes.
It's like, so we get to answer some questions?
Yeah.
I mean, my son would ask me questions like that, like, why do I want to read a book?
Yeah.
I'm just going to have to write a paper on it.
Right. Well, answer that for him. Why
Well, and
does
I
he
tell
want
him-
to read a book?
Yeah, because there's so many things you can get out of a book, whatever you like. If you like trucks, you can read about Trucktown. If you like giant spiders, you can get a giant spider book, a shark book, a fiction book, a funny book, a graphic novel. There really is something for everybody.
Did reading get you where you are today?
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm so glad that I was a reader. I mean, when I looked back in writing that book, Knucklehead, my autobiography,
Yeah.
it reminded me, because I was a reader, I did well in school and could accomplish all kinds of things.
Okay.
And the way I became a reader was to read books that I liked. Not so much the books that I was reading in school or had to read, but to read Go Dog Go at home, or read war comics, or read the Hardy Boys, or Mad Magazine. It was all stuff that I kind of found that matched my interest.
Here's book 2. Now, this is Melvin Might, and let me open this up so we can see this cast of characters that's being born,
Yeah.
which is so cool. Can you explain about this project?
Well, yeah, the Trucktown project is really different from an individual picture book that I've done before, like a Three Pigs or Stinky Cheese. This is designed to live everywhere. So it's going to be 50 books over 3 years of all kinds, picture books, readers, board books, sticker books. But it's also designed to be online, to be a TV show, to be animation, to be slippers,
wow.
to be stuff where kids can immerse themselves in that world. So, since we were doing so many books, we had to get a team of illustrators rather than just use one illustrator. So those characters were all designed by 3 amazing illustrators, Dave Shannon, Lauren Long, and Dave Gordon.
Cool.
And we all worked together. We actually dressed up in our overalls and we're in the conference room in Simon & Schuster, dressed up as like mechanics, working on the characters.
And you told me that they made it look like a garage so that
Yeah,
you felt...
beautiful. It was we got a set designer.
That is cool.
And the whole company would come in and just like check us out in our garage.
Yeah. You know, I love how creative that is. I mean,
Yeah.
that just opens up your mind. It gives you that whole place to be together and your minds can just run wild.
That's exactly right. Because then what happened is I had written the idea for all the characters and storylines, but we all got to kind of describe them together and realize that, yeah, like Melvin's the scaredy cat. He's the guy who's afraid of everything. He's always worried. I mean, that's what this book's all about.
Yeah.
He's just worried he can't do anything. So, but here he is flying across the bridge.
There's a little bit of the little engine that could in here when he's coming out of the pit.
It's actually the opposite. And the title was going to be, I Think I Can't. We just tweaked it a little bit.
Now, you're talking about it being a great big project, and I wanted to show our audience that here's one of the ready-to-roll books. It's not a ready-to-read or step into reading, it's ready-to-roll. And this is Trucktown, but it's Pete's Party, and it's level 1, and this is the level that we're looking at here.
Yeah, and see, and I love that kids then are reading for a purpose. It's not because a teacher told them to, it's because the trucks have to read the signs to get to Pete's Party. So they keep following the signs all through that. And actually this sequence is great, so it says keep smiling, and then flip the page, it's like trucks use left lane, trucks use right lane, and then the next page is trucks use fake mustaches. It's one of my favorites. I love to see the kindergartners just like it blows their mind. It changes their world.
Well, this is the kind of book that I think a lot of parents who have young, and I'm just going to go ahead and say boys, they are looking for this because their child is learning to read, they're getting the phonic thing down, they're kind of getting the sight word vocabulary, but it's like they don't want to go read that book about the bug, or, well, a bug they might want to read.
Right, or something
but, you know,
very quiet.
Yeah, they want something that has that zingy energy in it that just gets to them. And so this is just an answer to a prayer.
Well, that was really at the heart of it, too. And though I was careful to include the girls, because all the characters are based on 4-year-olds that I worked with for like a year at a school near me in Brooklyn. But it is about connecting with those boys who often don't see their kind of reading. Like we're telling them that reading is important and reading is for everyone, but they look around and it's like, wait a minute, it's my mom who reads to me. All my teachers are women, the librarians are women, and they're reading me books they like. Like, where's Smash Crash?
Right.
And that's why the first one was titled Smash Crash, just to give them the message right away.
And people keep saying this is fun.
Yes.
Well, let's have it be fun.
Yeah, where's the fun?
Yeah. All right. South Pole or Bust an Egg. Now, you don't really write these, or how does this work?
Well, for, say, like the Time Warp Trio,
Yeah.
That was an original 16-book series that I wrote that's for those beginning chapter book readers. But then once we got on television, it was a TV series with WGBH for a couple years. Then we adapted books from those television stories also, and graphic novels.
Yes.
Which then were something that the kids could connect with. Because I think that's another thing we need to do to bring kids into the 21st century, is say, you can watch TV. I mean, we're on TV. There's good TV, there's bad TV.
Exactly. Well, this is great because it's the Time Warp Trio, but it comes down a little bit. And so, again, like your late first grader, your second grader has something to turn to. And the thing that I thought was interesting, which I hadn't realized, is here is the high and the flighty, which is 3 girls who have the magic book that helps you time travel. And this South Pole or Bust an Egg is the 3 boys.
Yeah, this was actually a great development out of the TV series, because within the regular Time Warp, they meet up with their 3 great-granddaughters
Is that what it is?
who have the book also.
Okay,
And then we
okay.
just expanded their role in the television station,
Okay.
realizing, yeah, their great-granddaughters can go anywhere they want to.
Yeah.
So they're crossing over with each other all the time.
Oh, how
and any
fun.
combination of those 3 work together, too, which has really been fun
So
to do.
this is Amelia Earhart, and this is Scott going
Yeah.
to the South Pole. I mean, that's pretty cool stuff. It's information,
Yeah.
but it's done with great adventure.
Well, that's another thing I found a lot of reluctant readers are looking for. Or like my son, he wanted to read for a purpose. He wanted to find out information. He didn't just want to read about someone, growing up in their life in the prairie.
A story.
It's like
yeah.
that was just a killer for him.
Little House on the
Little
Prairie.
House
Are they
on
going to spend the whole chapter, what was it, building, a,
building a
door or
door.
something? Yeah,
He was just
right.
what killed him.
Yeah, that was so
He just didn't see
fun.
any purpose for that
Yeah,
story.
yeah. I find that as a librarian that there's a group of guys that reads for what I call exportable knowledge.
Yes.
They want information, and I consider that empowering.
Oh, I do
know,
too,
they
and
just-
that's what I get to do as ambassador, is to tell people that is reading.
Mm-hmm.
Reading nonfiction is reading. We don't think so, though, in the schools. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, schools really weigh the fiction novels
Mm-hmm.
heavily, and a lot of boys just don't like those.
There are, well, we could go on that one all day, but anyway. The true story of the 3 little pigs by a wolf. He's so misunderstood.
He is.
I'm sorry to hear that.
And that was the original, the very first book that got published, though it took a year of getting rejected.
Really?
Yeah, people just thought
I'll
it was
bet
too
they're
weird.
so sorry that they rejected.
I don't want to name names.
Was this 89, 88?
Yeah, it was published in '89.
Okay, all right. Well, if anyone is out there and they haven't found these, you've got to come to the library and get them, or go to the bookstore and get them, because especially for young readers who are wiggling in the seat,
Yeah.
they're just fabulous because you're so irreverent.
Well, and I like that also. I've heard from teachers and librarians using the picture books with older kids, like up through 8th grade, high schoolers.
Wow.
Because, I mean, in some ways, this is sophisticated. He's an unreliable narrator. He's the classic, narrator you can't believe.
Wow.
But in this short book format with
Yeah.
great illustrations.
Great.
And this is where I first met Lane Smith. He and I met through our wives who worked together
Wow.
on magazines in New York.
What happens when you and Lane Smith are in the same room?
Just things happen.
Yeah, I'll bet.
Ping pong, usually. We like playing ping pong.
Okay.
But that's why our books, I think, are so unusual, is we actually do collaborate, where a lot of times authors never meet their illustrator.
Yes.
So Lane and I worked on that. Or Stinky Cheese Man is another great example
Here,
of
let's
how
grab
we
that one too.
really, I finish the story,
Uh-huh.
then hand it off to Lane. He comes up with ideas. And then his wife, Molly, is our designer,
Wow.
which is another third person who's just really integral to the look of our book.
Tell people who don't know this book what it is.
It's a heartwarming story of a little man made of cheese.
Yeah, uh-huh.
Well, it's just deconstructing fairy tales. It's every fairy tale, and actually messing up every bit of a book, including the title
right.
page,
That's right.
the end papers.
Yes. The table of contents.
I love the title page, though. See?
Okay.
You can't go wrong there, right? And it's all my favorite kind of metafiction that I loved as a college kid and grad student.
He moves up the title page to try to fake out the giant.
Yeah, and I love it. And kids go like, no, the end paper's not supposed to be there. It's not the end.
But you know what? This is pretty fun, too. Your picture's George Washington, and Lane Smith is Abe Lincoln.
Nice resemblance. huh?
Yes, yes.
We just didn't want to look like those guys with the bad hair from the 80s. Thank goodness we didn't.
And you know what I loved about this? That you have the individual stories, but there's a weaving thing going on throughout the whole thing, which just pulls it all together.
Well, and that's the art of the picture book. It unfolds like a movie. I mean, Lane's a real movie and animation buff.
Oh, wow.
Which I think really adds to his storytelling.
Uh-huh.
I mean, you unfold it like a movie as you turn the page.
That's cool. That's a little Hugo Cabret thing going
absolutely.
on here.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's awesome. All right, the Frog Prince continued, and they start out at the end of the story that we all know, where they've lived happily ever after. And the
That's one of my favorite
kissed the
openings.
frog.
Where he kissed the prince and they lived happily ever after, or sort of.
Uh-oh.
And that picture alone just kind of says it all. Where he's licking the dragonflies off the wallpaper, looking a little bored. I love that the flowers are wilted in the vase there. It's kind of like, there's a lot going on.
Things are going down.
Well, that's
yeah.
the beauty of a picture book. Like, I didn't have to say any of that in the text, but leave the room for the illustrations to tell that story.
Yeah.
There's the picture of the relatives up here, a frog on
Oh,
a
wow.
throne.
Oh, I hadn't
It's
seen
just, it
that.
really rewards like a closer look.
Yeah, that's cool for the kids that love to really observe. And
Well,
there
and this
she is.
generation of kids is much more visually literate, I think, than we ever were. So I think that's what explains the rise of something like the graphic novel.
Yeah.
Because kids have seen so many images and such great design that I think they really count on it now.
Well, he's talking about his book so sort of intellectually, but you know, this man just writes the funniest stuff, and it's unexpected, and it's a romp. It's an absolute romp. You never know what's going to happen next. And in this one, he's going to meet witches from different fairy tales, and he knows his witches, and he knows his fairy tales, so he doesn't get caught up in it.
And he gets out of there.
Yeah.
And I love where kids become participants in the story, and they call out like, no, that's the witch from the gingerbread man, get out of there.
Oh, that's great.
Or the lady who brings the apple. So, would you like a little bite of the apple, dearie?
Yeah.
They go, no,
Yeah,
no.
so you really capture them. Like cinema suck, I think they would call it. You've like sucked them into the
Wow,
book.
I never heard that term,
No?
but that's kind of nice.
Yeah. Squids will be squids. It's important to have a moral a day, I guess.
Well, and that's part of what I do. I love to mess with forms, like starting with fairy tales. These are just Aesop's fables, using that form to retell, but realizing it doesn't have to be like a donkey or a crow. It can be a piece of toast and Fruit Loops.
Yes.
Or it can be a beef snack stick.
Yes, yes. I like the tortoise and the hare. And he's talking about this hare.
And a piece of hair.
Yes, yes. And
Or the elephant who always forgets in here.
yes, and keeps coming back and still hasn't quite learned the whole thing. Oh, Lord. And this one is so funny.
And that's just my son, like saying, oh, yeah, I did most of my homework. But then at the last minute going, oh, I have to do all of this in like 3 hours.
Yes, it's a rewrite 12 Greek myths as Broadway musicals.
And that was my wife saying, how long have you known about this?
Yes,
And Jake saying, I don't know.
And that's the thing you don't want to say.
And the moral of the story is don't ever say that to your grasshopper mom.
Yes, I don't know. I think you're getting a feel for what we're dealing with here. Just in the interest of time, well, I want to do baloney because it's so much fun.
You just wanted to say baloney.
Yeah, right. This is Henry P. Baloney, and maybe he's not the greatest reader in the world.
No, I think he's kind of a good storyteller, though.
Yes. And I went to the back and I looked at the list to see where all the words came from, because sometimes I was like, gee, that one kind of looks familiar. And it turned out it kind of was.
Yeah. And they come from those 25 different languages, ranging from French to Estonian or Maltese.
And it made me want to look at the word and go, okay, where did that one come from? Like this one, the geodrams and the cuculations. I was like, wait a second, that's pretty close.
Kind of close.
Yeah, exactly.
No, and I just had fun messing around with language there too, and imagining like how do books look to kids where they don't know most of the words.
Right.
But you can figure them out just by context, by illustrations.
Yes.
No, that was a lot of fun to do.
Yeah, and he goes up in space. I'm getting a very full lap. All right.
Wow, who wrote all these books?
Oh,
That's
really?
nice.
Someone with spare time. Yeah, right. All right. Science verse.
Very educational.
Truly educational. No science class.
Well, the first
should be
one was
without.
Math Curse.
Oh, let's do
because
that.
I was always
Okay.
trying to come up with a funny idea for a math book, because I taught math for years as a teacher.
Really?
Yeah, yeah. I
How
never taught
high?
English.
How high did you go?
Like 2nd grade math and then 8th grade algebra I also taught.
Good
Because
grief.
I love math.
Do
I
you?
think, yeah, I think it's great.
So you know what Fibonacci
Well, I think it's
numbers
funny.
are.
Yeah, that's why I came up with Mrs. Fibonacci. And I love that kids will explain that to their parents.
Okay.
And so on Monday in math class, when Mrs. Fibonacci says, you know you can think of almost everything as a math problem, everything turns into a problem. It took me years to figure out that device to think, how could I do a funny math book?
Yeah.
Because math is not really that funny of a subject.
I would agree.
But then it's like everything, the outfits in the kid's closet,
Yeah.
it's like how many shirts in a closet, how many feet in the shoes.
I like the bus.
The bus problem
I
is
love
great.
that. Is hysterical.
In fact, I read that to a group of third graders and say, like, there's 5 kids already on the bus, 5 more kids get on the next stop, 5 more get on the last stop. So true or false,
Yes.
what is the bus driver's name? And they all just say 15.
Yeah.
They've just been so trained.
Right,
it's like,
right.
it has to be 15.
Yes.
I counted.
I was doing the math.
So I put everything in there, fractions, percentages.
Oh, it's so funny. And I love the birthday chart because I
Gotta have
can
a
see the
birthday
mind
chart.
going off, you know?
Cupcakes. Well, a lot of it goes back to my childhood, too, just like as that guy in the classroom spacing out.
Were you in the back?
Usually, yeah, because I'd be
Okay.
in the back telling jokes with my friend Tim Kowalczyk and
Oh, wow.
getting in trouble.
Where is Tim today?
I think he probably got smacked on the
banker?
head enough
No,
times. No, he might be out in the woods.
Oh.
Because he was always the guy who got caught.
Oh!
Because I was the guy who was the reader. And the teacher would look in the back and go like, who's making all that trouble back there? Oh, it couldn't be John.
No.
Because he reads.
Yeah.
That guy next to him?
That's right.
He's the trouble.
There's the moral of the story.
Yeah, the moral of the story
Very
is
nice.
become
All
a
now
reader.
I get to pick up science verse.
Yeah, because
This
math
is
course
so fun.
ends with everything is great
Yes.
until science class.
Oh, and then Mr. Newton.
And Mr. Newton.
Oh, no!
And I wasn't actually going to write a
There it
follow-up
is.
book, but so many kids wrote and asked me, said, where's the science book?
Right.
Yeah, like 4 years later.
Oh, that's
I did this.
great. Oh, that's
And
great.
I couldn't figure out how to do science in a different way either until I thought, oh yeah, like what if everything became a science poem? And then I could just parody poems.
Oh, and you parodied them. My mother's 81, and I sat on the phone and read her these, and you know, she was
Nice.
definitely an English teacher, and just, 'twas fructose.
Well, instead of Jabberwocky,
And
that
the
becomes
vitamins.
gobblegooky.
Yes!
I just read that to the Lewis Carroll Society in New York last week.
Oh, I'll bet they
They loved every
roared.
good.
Oh
It was
my
a funny
gosh.
collection of people.
And the stopping, oh, here's scientific method at the bat
Nice.
instead of Casey. And I love the stopping by the woods one. Only where is
Stopping by
it?
a planet on a snowy
Yes.
evening. Yeah, that's the
yes.
very last one.
Is it? Okay. Oh, the senseless lab of Professor Revere.
Or my favorite is why scientists don't write nursery rhymes, because they're just terrible. And they turn out like Jack be nimble, Jack be quick. Oh,
I
'twas the night
love
before
this.
anything.
Yes.
A little Big Bang Theory with Santa mixed in.
Yes, it's hysterical.
And that illustration just
Oh.
says it all, too. I love the stuff Lane comes
Everything
up with.
flying out,
Yeah.
flying around. There's
Oh,
the
there's astronaut.
stopping by a planet on a snowy evening. I mean, the imagination, the humor, just the letting the imagination go out and go wild. What a door opener for kids.
Well, that's what I think I learned as a teacher, to inspire kids rather than lecture them. So it doesn't help to tell them that reading is important or reading is magic or any of that. It's like just show them a reason to be a reader. Say, how about this? You could take a poem and then just mess it up.
Yeah.
And they love that idea.
You make it so real. You make it all come alive, books alive. That's great. We're going to take a short break, and when we come back, we're going to be talking to Jon about his wonderful initiative, Guys Read. Stay with us.
Pants, pants, pants. I am folding the pants. The pants are long. Do they go on my head? Do they? Do the pants go on my head? No. They go on
Everyday moments can become teaching moments because learning starts long before school does. Give your child the start they need at bornlearning.org.
No matter where you live, life in the ocean depends on you. To help protect our ocean, recycle and dispose of your trash properly. To learn what you can do, go to keepoceansclean.org.
Welcome back, and we're going to be talking now about some of the books that Jon Scieszka has written for older readers. It's so great that he started out with the Trucktown books, and you can just stay with them as your child gets older and keep them really interested in reading. a lot of people have heard of his fabulous Time Warp Trio series. And how many books are in this series now?
16.
16.
Plus. I mean, 16 of the original books.
Okay.
And then even more spin-off kind of books.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah.
And give people the basic premise of what's going on here.
Well, the trio is just 3 boys who one day one of them gets a magic book from his Uncle Joe, who's a magician. And it turns out this book can send them anywhere in time or space, which is a great literary device to just have them go anywhere. And being classic, like 9-year-old boys, they never read the directions. So they always lose it, and they have to find it to get back. And they get in trouble everywhere.
Yes.
Like from prehistoric times, in Your Mother Was a Neanderthal. Knights of the Kitchen Table was the very first one.
Okay.
Where they meet up with King Arthur and dragons and the Black Knight. And it was just so much fun to then sort of take kids to historical spots. But then just let them act like 9-year-old kids.
Regular kids.
Yeah.
It's Magnificent Joe, Unusual Sam, and what's Fred?
I forget what Fred is.
Okay,
He just
poor
kind of got a
Fred.
name. Yeah. Fred always gets. It might be Fred the Brave even. 'Cause
Oh,
Fred's a pretty strong guy.
Cool.
Yeah.
Well, this one cracked me up because they want to get back to New York.
Always.
But they're
Yep.
they're asking King Arthur or somebody about New York, and he's like, "Well, York." But
He's a
New
little
York
confused,
ringeth no chimes. That was
And that's Merlin, the magician.
Is it?
Yeah, he
Okay.
thinks they're competition too. He's a little worried.
oh yes.
And the nice part about those books is they're built in this way for reluctant readers. They're short chapters with cliffhanger endings. I kind of stole the form from television, where it keeps the reader interested, and it's like digestible chunks, and illustrated throughout too. So some of the pages inside don't look so daunting to a reader.
Yes.
Yeah, exactly, like that page, and they go like, oh, okay, I can do that.
Yeah.
And then you turn the page, and there's a giant illustration. So you just read that whole page.
Right. Hey, you're breezing
Done.
through this
You're
thing. Yeah,
rocking.
right. Yeah, right. And so, because one is 2095, so you take them forward.
They can go into the future.
And
Yep.
back. Yeah.
And that's a big piece for readers who are struggling. It's really wonderful to help them find a series, because I find my kids
yeah.
in school,
Yes.
when they'd finally find a book they like, they said, oh, can I have another one just like it? Because that helps that reader too, where the characters are the same. The structure of every adventure is exactly the same. They start in trouble, they flash back to how they got there, and then they get out of it.
John, what other authors do you recommend to parents for, say, 7, 8, 9-year-old boys who are looking for more of this when they've read them all and maybe even read them all twice?
Oh,
Then
you know
where
what?
do you
I
go?
really like Dan Gutman. He has this series called Weird School with really funny titles, like Miss Lucy is Goosey,
Yes.
Miss Klutz is a nut.
Yes.
He's just like, and he's got a bunch of those out.
He does.
But honestly, anything that connects to a kid's interest is a great way. Like in that nonfiction world, if a kid loves spiders, let him read Nick Bishop's Spiders.
Oh.
A great photographic
And the
book.
frogs.
And the frogs.
Oh, my gosh.
Stunning.
Yes.
Or honestly, Captain Underpants
Yep.
is still a classic. Junie B. Jones, some boys will read that. But those are really funny too. The Baby Mouse books, which are graphic novels.
Are you getting feedback that boys are reading those as well as girls?
Yeah, yeah,
Okay.
definitely.
Okay.
Baby Mouse, maybe not so much because it's a little pinkish. It's
right.
just like the pink color, I think,
Yeah.
turns boys up.
Yeah.
But like the Star Wars graphic novels, those are very cool.
And speaking of graphic novels, I just happen to have one of your graphic novels. This is a Time Warp Trio, and you can see it's much loved. It's very chewed.
I love
and-
to see
yeah,
books like
I
that, actually.
yeah.
It shows somebody did like it.
Absolutely, a lot of somebody.
Yeah,
now,
yeah.
do you write these, John?
Those are based on the television show.
Okay.
And I love the way those turned out.
All right.
Because I supervised all those scripts.
Oh, good.
So there was a script writer who came up with a different story, and then we used the images from the show.
Okay.
And then formatted them as this book. So it's more kind of stuff that I oversaw.
What do you think of graphic novels just as a genre?
Oh, I think the graphic novels are spectacular. And I know some people are a little leery that that's not really reading.
Right.
But I honestly think that's good reading on its own. It doesn't have to be leading to something else. There's very sophisticated stuff out there.
Okay. All right, so they're not missing anything when they're doing
Not
that.
at all, not at all.
All right, let's go to your baby here.
Oh, nice.
Guys Write for Guys Read.
When this is a collection of pieces that I use to help me fund my literacy campaign, Guys Read, which is mostly online at guysread.com. But this book, I asked 100 different writers and illustrators to contribute just a short little thing about being a guy. And one, just to introduce all kinds of readers to different writers and illustrators. So I got a range of guys from people in the business already, like Mo Willems, a Jack Gantos, a Gary Paulson, T.A. Barron, to other people in the wider world, like Stephen King, who let us use a piece, or Matt Groening, who invented The Simpsons.
Yeah.
So it's just like to show boys there's a lot of different ways to be a guy.
You had an editor from Vanity Fair or Esquire.
Esquire,
yes.
yeah. Actually, I met a bunch
Right
of those
here.
guys from people my wife worked with. Another editor from Sports Illustrated who had a great piece in
How
there.
wonderful.
Yeah, yeah.
That's great. Well, what does your online Guys Read initiative do?
Well, first it lets people know that this is a challenge to get boys reading, and that boys read in ways different from how girls read. But I think it's nice, we've really now we've got people's attention. And then the next step is to give people tips for how to get boys reading.
Give us some tips.
Well, including let boys read, or let all readers read whatever they want. Really expand the definition. Don't make it just fiction. Let readers read nonfiction, humor, which often doesn't get allowed in the classroom.
Or any awards.
Or any awards, exactly. Or audiobooks.
Yes.
Or the graphic novels, or the information books, or just kind of technical books, or online reading. Let them read anything to get started.
You know, I think a lot of parents out there feel as though books can really create character in a person.
Yeah.
And so they're thinking of that their kids reading in terms of developing the character. And what would you say to them, you know, when your kid just wants to read The Stinky Cheese Man, you know?
Yeah.
What would you say to the people that are really worrying about that?
Well, I would tell them to relax. We've gone way too far in that direction of having books be character building, or to make it all a test. I think that's really been a mistake. We've taken any joy out of reading. So just kind of calm down a little bit. Your kid's not going to turn out to be a criminal because they read Captain Underpants. Let them read something funny. Or look at what you read for enjoyment. I mean, chances are it's probably not so character building either. Entertainment Weekly is fine, or Us Weekly.
People Magazine.
People Magazine, yeah. There's all different kinds of reading. Let kids start there, and they'll find what they're interested.
You know, I read that you started out reading comic books and that today you're reading Kafka and Günter Grass, and I was like, whoa! Do you think that's an evolutionary process?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I became a reader starting reading Dr. Seuss books and Go Dog Go and Mad Magazine. And then as I got in high school and college, I mean, that's where I discovered I loved those German writers.
Wow.
Or the guys who mess around with fiction, like Borges or Cervantes or Thomas Pynchon. And those are the guys I love to read.
Wow.
But it kind of mixes up with that. But I also love reading comics or stuff that's funny, short pieces. So it's a little of everything.
That's great. So just give them their choices and don't feel so bad that they're not reading My Friend Flicka or something.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know?
And don't take it personally. My Friend Flicka might be your favorite book. And I tell teachers that too. But maybe that's not every 7 or 8-year-old's favorite book.
Right.
Maybe they want to read, war stories or hunting stories.
Yes.
Don't take it as a personal challenge.
Yeah, or something about monsters or something.
Yeah, yeah.
So,
I love this one. This is my favorite cover of all.
nice.
And it's a book just out. It's my autobiography.
That's great. Now
Up till about 5th grade.
Now when kids come in and they have to do the biography report, oh, do we have something to hand them? This is so
now
great.
it'll take a little pressure off Sacagawea.
Yes, let me see how many pages are in this, though, because we do have a page
Over
requirement.
100.
Oh, thank goodness. Thank you for that, over 100 pages.
I thought about that.
So you grew up with 5 brothers?
Yeah. And so then I didn't even have to like make up stories. There's plenty of stories with those guys.
Right.
And then the whole thing is illustrated with photos from my scrapbook.
Oh,
And
that's
my
fine, a
brother's
good
scrapbooks too.
Oh, here you are being a Cub Scout. That's great.
Nice.
Now, I really liked the one where you went to Catholic school for what, 9
Probably like
years?
9 years, yeah.
And you were going to adopt a baby.
Yeah. Well, they had pagan babies that we would buy, yes.
Okay.
And we had collected money because whoever got the most money got to name the baby, boys or girls.
Yes.
And when we got all the money, the boys won. And we wanted to name our babies Al Kaline and Bill Freehand because they were famous Detroit Tiger baseball players. And the nun just said, Matthew and Mark would be nice names.
Let's go for an
And we said,
apostle.
no, come on, they got to be Al Kaline and Bill Freehand.
And you guys are like, oh.
Yeah, and she just wrote
Deer in the
Matthew and Mark.
headlights. Yeah, right.
And that was it.
Now, there's a little story in here about crossing swords.
That is an incredibly motivational story. Because
totally
I found
agree.
I've read that to groups of third graders, and they're
Yes.
inspired to actually try that on their own.
And you've read this to other people, have you
I
not?
read that to our president
There
and
you
our
go.
first lady.
Okay.
Though they asked me not to.
So if,
they were a little
if
worried.
it's historical, it's worth reading in the White House,
Yeah,
right?
and it's a story of like, well, whenever we'd have to go anywhere, like someone would always have to go to the bathroom. And because it was quicker, and because we had the anatomy to make it possible, sometimes we'd go like 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 guys all at once.
You know, I think we did well to have just finally gotten to this point, you know, in the
Exactly.
interview. I think you and I held up our ends really well for
We
a long
did.
time.
Well, I'm the ambassador. I have diplomatic immunity.
Thank goodness.
We can talk about whatever
please
we want.
share a little bit of that with me. If you have an older reader, I mean, this makes a great, great biography to read, autobiography. But I brought in 2 other books because these are anthologies, and some of Jon's work is in each one. This one is Noisy Outlaws.
Oh, and this one was fun because all the pieces in there the money went from this book to help a group called 826, which I'm also part of.
What's that?
It's a literacy group started by Dave Eggers, who's an adult fiction writer. And it's a spectacular outfit. You can find that online too at
Oh, that's
826.com.
And this one, you've got like every slogan that was ever written, and you created a story with it. That was really
just using
cool.
advertising.
Yeah.
See, I watch a lot of TV
You pay
too.
attention, don't you?
Well,
Yes.
I pay attention.
And this one is Tomorrowland, Stories About the Future. And it's I mean, you went back to the Neanderthals with this.
Yeah, that was fun. I was
Yeah.
just asked to do something that was either way in the past or way in the future. And I love working on anthologies like that, just to do, because you get a lot of different flavors of a lot of different writers.
Well, speaking of the future, I know you said you've got 3 years worth of Trucktown things coming
Yeah,
out. Have you
lots
got
of
anything
Trucktown
else in mind that we should be looking forward to?
Yeah, I'm also working on a picture book with Dave Shannon.
Oh, great.
Who did Know David.
Oh, yeah.
And it's the story of Robot Zot, who comes to take over the world.
That'll
And then
be
I'm
great.
also working on a whole other series, probably for more like middle grade readers.
Oh, how great.
Which will be a real multimedia kind of thing where kids can actually write part of the stories. And it's the story called Space Invaders.
Ooh.
Or Space Heads, actually.
When would that be coming our way?
Probably next year, 09.
Oh, fantastic.
Yeah, I'm working
that's
on it now.
exciting.
So I'm always
That's
kind of
great.
working on stuff and sort of other stuff that's out there and being the ambassador and just wandering around.
Wow. So you came a long way, baby, from the back row with,
Yeah,
with your
exactly.
friend who's now wandering the
With
woods.
poor Tim Kowalczyk, wherever he is.
Thank you so much for coming
Oh,
in
my
today.
pleasure. Thanks for
This was
inviting me into
so
your
much
living room
fun.
here.
Yes, our little cozy home. And thank you all for joining us today. You can see there's just something here for everybody, and especially those reluctant readers out there. He's now taking care of you almost from birth to high school.